morning, you guys. How y'all been? How you feeling? How's your family? Like, what's good? Let me know. Y'all don't really be talking to me in the comments, so leave me a comment down below. Let me know what's good. Let me know what you want me to do next. Let me know how you felt about my past projects. Like, tell me how your day went. Say something. But anyway, if y'all new here, my name's Ciara, and this is Self-Made Energy, where we want for nothing because we can manifest anything. This week, you guys, I just want to explain real quick why it looks a little different. I'm redecorating in my office a little bit, so it's a mess. So here we are in a nice clean ambiance because y'all don't need to see that rack. But anyway, this week, you guys, I made 2 corset belts, and I'm like so in love with them. They came out so fire. And it's nothing crazy. It's not like a real corset. Like, it'll do a little squeezing, a little shaping, but nothing crazy. I didn't actually want it for corset purposes. I just wanted it because it was cute. But anyway, let's get into it because I'm done talking and I look ratchet anyway. So let's go. Okay guys, so the first thing I'm going to do is figure out the shape of the corset belt that I want. And in order for me to do that, I just took this interfacing lining that has pattern stripes on it so you can make patterns on it. And I just laid it across my torso and just drew lines about the shape that I thought it would be. And then I cut those lines out and then I took them on a separate piece of interfacing and traced everything out and made sure everything was nice and straight and everything lined up right. And that was going to be my corset belt pattern. I made one to open in the front and one to open in the back, but they used the exact same pattern. Once I was done creating my pattern, I moved on to figuring out all the fabrics I was going to use and cutting out all the pattern pieces. And we're not going to talk about my pattern weights. They are what they are and they are delicious. But anyway, I cut out 2 layers of satin pink fabric for my lining, one for each belt. I cut out 1 layer of fashion fabric for one belt. This is my fashion fabric for one belt. I cut out 1 layer in each pattern piece, and I made sure to line up the pattern on the fabric. Since this is a very bold pattern, I wanted to make sure the pieces lined up correctly. I then moved on to cutting out 3 layers of interfacing. I wish I would have cut out 4, 1 for each layer, but I didn't. I only cut out 3, so I only interfaced 3 layers. And by the way, interfacing is just like a stiff material that you can either iron or sew on to the wrong sides of your fabrics just to stiffen things up. Like, they usually use it in like collars or like waistbands or stuff like that. But yeah, that's what interfacing is. But anyway, once I was done cutting out all my fabrics and organizing everything into nice little neat piles so I wouldn't be confused, I took both layers of my lining and both layers of my interfacing and I ironed them together. And then I also interfaced 1 layer of my fashion fabric. And again, like I said, I wish I would have interfaced both layers, but I only did 1. So once I was done interfacing everything, which you saw me just do while I was rambling on through the video, I took all the pieces from my lining and putting them right sides together and doing a straight stitch. I'm back stitching at the beginning and end of each stitch just to make sure it stays in. And I'm doing that across the entire belt. There's literally nothing special here. I'm just taking all the pieces and doing a straight stitch right sides together. And now moving on to my fashion fabric, and I'm doing the exact same thing. Now this is the fabric I was saying I wish I had interfaced because I interfaced the lining. That's why it's so stiff and nice and perfect and springy looking. And this one is going to end up stretching on me, even though I thought it was so stiff and it was going to hold its own. Nope, it folded on me. But it's alright. Oh no, I forgot to mention, my camera cut off. And of course I didn't notice and kept on sewing. So I ended up sewing both the lining and the fashion fabric together, right sides together. I did a straight stitch up both sides and along that top perimeter, and I left the bottom open. I also sewed in my boning channels along the seams of every piece that I sewed together. That also wasn't in the footage, my bad y'all. Once I was done sewing in the boning channels, I flipped the entire thing right side out and I ironed everything so it was nice and flat. And now here we are catching up with the footage again. I'm doing a top stitch along the entire perimeter, along those 3 edges that I previously stitched, just to make sure those edges lay nice and flat and crisp once everything's together. And I'm just clipping any stray edges, make sure everything's nice and neat before I put all my finishing touches and stick my boning in. And now moving on to putting in my boning. This is just some featherlight boning I got from Joann's. I used 2 yards for each belt. That's just for some measurements. It's really up to your body measurements, but that's how much I use for mine. And I just cut the boning to size and I shoved it into the boning channel that I previously sewed down, which was also not in the footage. I missed a lot of footage for this belt, but it's okay because you're going to see it in the next belt, which is why I didn't even bother to mention none of that. Once all my boning was in and I was sure everything was nice and straight, I folded the bottom edges in and I tucked everything in, pinned everything together, and I just did a top stitch along the entire bottom edge just to close everything in and make sure nothing was poking out. And then this corset belt was basically done. I put the grommets in the front, which also was not in the footage, but again, you'll get the gist of it. Once you see it, you'll know what I did. And you're gonna see me put the grommets in the other belt as well, so I'm not really skipping over anything. We're just skipping to the next belt. And here we are. As you can see, my first belt is now finished and on the table out for display. Isn't she lovely? But anyway, moving on to the task at hand. I'm taking my fashion fabric and I'm putting them right sides together, and I'm just doing a straight stitch the same exact way I did the previous belt. I'm also doing the same exact thing to my lining fabrics, right sides together, straight stitch, and then I'm taking those pieces and I'm making sure they're lining up together, so I'm doing them at the same exact time because I was traumatized at trying to make the lines match up on the previous belt. But you didn't see that in the footage, which I'm kind of glad because the footage disappeared. Once I was done sewing all the pieces together, I ironed everything so it was nice and flat, and I ironed my seams open so I'd be prepared to put in the boning. And I wanted to be a little fancy, so I got some adhesive tape and I put it on the seams and I taped down my boning strip before I sewed it in, because last time I did it without it and it was moving around a little bit and it was just making it a little difficult. So I just used some adhesive tape, and the only con I would say about it is it made my presser foot slightly sticky, which was a little bit annoying because once I was done with the adhesive tape, I was still kind of getting stuck to the presser foot. So I did have to wipe it off with like an alcohol pad and it did stop, but just a heads up, it is a little annoying because it does get a little sticky everywhere. Once I was done securing all my boning channels in place, I took my fashion fabric and my lining fabric and I placed them right sides together, making sure that all the seams were lined up correctly. And I just did a straight stitch along that entire top edge, securing the boning channels in place so the boning won't pop out. And also once I flip it over, that seam will be nice and crisp on the outside. Once I had my piece flipped over and lined up nicely how I wanted it, I just did a top stitch along that entire top edge just to keep everything nice and stuck in place where I wanted it to be. And I did have to finagle with the machine a little bit because my press foot was a little sticky, like I told you. So I kept like popping the thread because the fabric kept getting stuck. But it's all right. I made it through it. I just kept rethreading the machine and kept finagling with it until I got through this project. And once it was done, you couldn't tell that I was struggling throughout the whole thing. And that's the goal. Struggle, but still succeed in the end. And we did that, so I'm happy. Now I'm just taking my strips of boning and I'm sticking it in the channel and trimming it to the appropriate length, just so it's not too long and poking me, but also not that it's too short so where it doesn't reach the entire length of the tube. Make sure to leave yourself some seam allowance so you can fold up those bottom edges and top stitch them in place once your boning is in place. And as you can see, my boning is very curvy. It does not come straight. It's ridiculous if it just comes straight. So you do have to iron it to make sure that it's nice and flat and it's not distorting your piece in any way. So I just took my piece to the iron and put a fabric down just so it wouldn't be burnt up. Flattened everything out and everything is looking nice and crisp now. Once everything is nice and flat and lined up, I just took the last step of putting the belt together and folded my bottom edges up and did a top stitch along that entire bottom edge to close the entire belt up. Only the sides are open, and I need that open so I can place my grommet strip in. So if you're following along with me, your top of your belt and your bottom should be completely closed, your boning should be fully in, and all you need to do is add your grommets and your belt will be completed. Yeah, sis. So in order to make my grommet strip, I just took 2 pieces of my fashion fabric and I interfaced it so it would be nice and stiff, and I folded it right sides together, and I did a stitch around 3 sides, leaving one side open so I could flip it right side out. Once I flipped it right side out, I did a top stitch around those same 3 edges so they could be nice and crisp. And then I decided where I wanted to place my grommets on those strips. In order to place my grommets, I just took my awl and I poked a hole where I wanted my grommets to be, and I used my X-Acto knife just to open the hole just a little bit, just enough so the grommet heads can fit in. And I stuck that front piece inside and put it on top of the little grommet tool, and then I placed the fabric on top, and then I put the top of the grommet tool over that like a sandwich, and I just banged it together with my hammer a couple times, and it stuck the grommets in place. And once all my grommets were in, I just took that little grommet placket and I stuck it inside my belt, and I just folded those raw edges that were hanging out. I folded them inside as well, and I just did one top stitch along that last edge, securing those raw edges and the grommet placket in place. And I did that on both sides of my belt. Once I was done making those grommet plackets, the belt is actually done and can be laced up and worn. But of course, because I'm a little extra, I wanted some extra fine details. So I ended up doing some top stitching around both sides of the boning channels, just so the boning could stick out and be a little bit more puffy and prominent when I wore it. And I think it turned out so much better. So I'm so glad I went in and did that. But yeah, once that was done, I just laced it up, and y'all, these babies are so gorgeous. Like, do you see this? Fire. Oh my god, you guys, you made it to the end of the video. I'm so excited. Yes. Like, do y'all see this? Oh my god. Like, these are so gorgeous. I love that I can dress them up or dress it down or somewhere in between. Like, the possibilities are endless with these two pieces. I'm so excited. I love how they came out. I can't say it enough. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, don't forget to like it and don't forget to leave me a comment telling me how you feel about it, letting me know what you would have done, what color you would have picked, how you would have did it up, how you would style it. Like, talk to me. What's good, y'all? How y'all doing? But anyway, that's enough talking for now. Until next time, you guys. Love, peace, and cupcakes. Bye.